The rain fell hard on the city streets that cold November night, each drop hitting the pavement like tiny bullets of ice. Marcus Williams sat in the back of his silver Mercedes, staring out the window at the blurry lights passing by through the darkness. At 42 years old, he was one of the richest men in the country. His technology company had made him millions of dollars. But tonight, money felt like nothing more than meaningless numbers on a computer screen. His driver, James, had been with him for 8 long years and knew exactly when to stay quiet. Tonight was definitely one of those nights when silence was the only thing that made sense. Marcus pressed his cold hand against the foggy window and let out a deep, heavy sigh that seemed to come from the very bottom of his soul. It had been exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 12 days since he lost his precious son, Alex. The boy was only 7 years old when the terrible cancer took him away from this world. Marcus could still remember every single detail of how Alex used to run to him when he came home from work each evening. Those small, warm arms would wrap around his legs with such pure, innocent joy that it made Marcus feel like the luckiest man alive. The little boy would look up at him with those bright blue eyes and say, "Daddy, I miss you so much today." Now, the big house felt completely empty and silent, like a museum where nobody lived anymore. His wife, Sarah, had left him exactly 6 months after Alex died. She packed her bags on a Tuesday morning while Marcus was at work, and when he came home, all he found was a letter on the kitchen table. She wrote that the sadness was too much for her heart to bear, and that seeing Marcus every single day reminded her too much of what they had lost together. She said she needed to go far away to try to heal her broken heart. Marcus understood her feelings because his own heart was broken too, but it still felt like losing Alex all over again when she walked out his life forever. As they drove across the old stone bridge that led to his quiet neighborhood, Marcus heard something very strange floating through the sound of the rain and traffic. It was faint at first, like the sound of a small kitten crying somewhere in the distance. But as James drove slower through the heavy evening traffic, the sound became much clearer and more urgent. It was definitely a child crying, and the heartbreaking sound was coming from somewhere far below the bridge. Marcus sat up straight in his leather seat, his heart suddenly beating much faster than normal. Something deep inside his chest told him this was important. "James, stop the car right now," he said with a firm, serious voice. James looked confused in the rearview mirror, but immediately pulled over to the side of the busy road. Marcus opened the heavy car door and stepped out into the freezing cold rain, not caring at all that his expensive business suit was getting completely soaked. He walked quickly to the edge of the stone bridge and looked down into the scary darkness below. What he saw there made his breath catch in his throat like he was choking. There, huddled against the cold concrete wall under the bridge, was a very small girl who looked terribly alone and frightened. She appeared to be about 6 years old, with long, tangled blonde hair that was dirty and messy. Her pink dress was torn in several places and covered with mud and stains. In her thin, shaking arms, she was holding 2 tiny babies, trying desperately to keep them warm with a dirty, torn blanket that looked like it came from a garbage dump. The babies were crying softly in weak, hungry voices, and the little girl was whispering to them in a gentle voice, telling them that everything would be okay even though she was obviously scared and cold herself. Marcus felt his eyes immediately fill with hot tears that mixed with the cold raindrops on his face. This terrible scene looked exactly like something from his worst nightmares about innocent children suffering all alone with no one to help them. The little girl reminded him so much of Alex when he was sick and scared, and Marcus felt like someone was squeezing his heart with strong hands. He knew right away that he could not just walk away and pretend he never saw this heartbreaking situation. Without thinking twice about the danger or the mess, Marcus hurried down the steep, muddy slope that led under the dark bridge. His shiny black leather shoes slipped and slid on the wet, slippery ground, and he almost fell down several times. But he didn't care at all about his safety or his expensive clothes. As he got closer to the children, the little girl suddenly saw him coming, and her eyes went wide with terrible fear. She quickly pulled the crying babies even closer to her thin chest and pressed her small body harder against the cold concrete wall, trying to make herself invisible. "Please don't hurt us, mister," she whispered in a voice that was shaking from both cold and fear. "We didn't do anything wrong at all. We're just trying to stay warm and safe." Please don't call the police on us." Marcus immediately stopped walking and carefully knelt down on the cold, muddy ground, not caring one bit that his expensive suit pants were getting completely ruined. His voice was as gentle and soft as he could make it when he spoke to the frightened child. "I'm not going to hurt you, sweetheart," he said in the same caring tone he used to use with Alex. "I promise I only want to help you and your babies. Can you tell me what your name is?" He kept his hands where she could see them and tried to look as friendly and safe as possible, even though his heart was breaking into a million pieces as he looked at these three helpless children. The little girl stared at him for what felt like a very long time, as if she was trying to look deep into his soul to decide whether she could trust him or not. Her big eyes were full of fear, but also hope, like she desperately wanted to believe that someone good had finally come to help them. Finally, she spoke in a voice so quiet and weak that he could barely hear her over the sound of the rain. "I'm Emma," she said, her lips barely moving. "These are my baby brothers, Tommy and Jake. They're only 4 months old, and they're really hungry. I tried to find food for them, but nobody would give me anything, and I don't have any money." Marcus felt his heart completely break into a million pieces when he heard her sad story. This tiny little girl was trying to take care of 2 helpless babies all by herself, living under a cold bridge in the freezing rain with no food, no warm clothes, and no help from anyone. It was the most heartbreaking thing he had ever seen in his entire life. "Where are your parents, Emma?" he asked as gently as possible, even though he was afraid to hear the answer. Emma's beautiful eyes filled with tears, but she tried very hard to be brave and strong. "Mama died when Tommy and Jake were born," she whispered, and her voice cracked like she was about to cry. "The doctors couldn't save her, and she went to heaven. Daddy said he couldn't take care of all 3 of us by himself because it was too hard and cost too much money. He brought us here 3 days ago and said that someone nice would come help us soon. But nobody came until now." Marcus felt burning anger rise up in his chest like fire when he heard how a father could abandon his own children, but he pushed those angry feelings down deep inside, because right now these poor children needed his help, not his anger. He very slowly reached out his hand toward Emma, being careful not to scare her. "Will you please let me help you and your little brothers?" he asked softly. "I can take all of you somewhere warm and safe, with lots of good food and clean clothes and soft beds. You won't have to be cold or hungry anymore." Emma looked at him with those big, scared eyes that reminded him so much of Alex when he was afraid. She had probably been taught never to trust strangers, but she was so cold and hungry and desperate that she didn't know what else to do. The babies in her arms were crying harder now, and she could see that they were getting sicker and weaker. "You promise you won't separate us?" she asked in a voice full of worry. "Tommy and Jake need me to take care of them. I'm all they have left in the whole world." Marcus nodded his head firmly, feeling hot tears running down his cold face and mixing with the raindrops. "I promise with all my heart," he said seriously. "We'll all stay together no matter what happens. I will never let anyone separate you from your brothers." Emma stared at him for another long moment, then slowly nodded her head. She was still scared, but something about this kind man made her feel like maybe, just maybe, everything might be okay. James had followed Marcus down under the bridge, and when he saw the 3 children, his mouth dropped wide open in shock. He had worked for Marcus for many years, but he had never seen anything like this terrible situation. He immediately took off his warm coat and wrapped it carefully around Emma and the babies, trying to help keep them warm. "Sir, we need to get them to a hospital right away," he said with urgent worry in his voice. "These babies look very sick and weak. They need medical help immediately." Marcus very carefully lifted one of the tiny babies, while Emma held tightly to the other one. The little boy felt so light in his arms, like he weighed almost nothing at all. His small face was pale white, and his breathing sounded shallow and weak, like he was having trouble getting enough air. Marcus's heart raced with terrible worry as they all hurried back to the warm car. Emma walked as close beside Marcus as she could, never letting go of her baby brother for even 1 second. She kept looking up at Marcus like she was afraid he might disappear or change his mind about helping them. When they reached the car, James quickly started the engine and turned the heat up as high as it would go. Emma sat in the back seat, still holding one baby while Marcus held the other. She had never been in such a fancy car before, but she was too worried about her brothers to pay attention to anything else. At the hospital, doctors and nurses rushed out to help them as soon as they saw the sick babies. The medical team moved very fast, taking the children into the emergency room and starting to check their health right away. Emma absolutely refused to leave her brother's side, even when the kind nurses tried to take her to a different room to get cleaned up and checked by a doctor. "I have to stay with them," she kept saying over and over again, her voice full of panic. "They get scared when I'm not there. I promised Mama before she died that I would always take care of them." Marcus watched as the busy medical team worked to help the babies, and he felt more worried than he had felt since Alex was sick. The babies were severely underweight and dehydrated, which meant their little bodies didn't have enough water or food to be healthy. They also had bad coughs and fevers from being out in the cold rain for so many days. But the head doctor, a nice woman named Dr. Martinez, said that with proper medical care and good food, the babies would get better and be healthy again. Emma was also very thin and had a bad cough, but she was strong and brave, and the doctor said she would be fine too. Throughout the long, scary night at the hospital, Marcus stayed right there with them, making sure they had everything they needed and that no one tried to take the children away from each other. When morning finally came and sunlight started shining through the hospital windows, a social worker arrived to talk about what would happen to the 3 children. She was a kind woman named Mrs. Peterson who had been helping children for many years, but her news was not what Marcus wanted to hear at all. "We'll need to place them in foster care as soon as they're healthy enough to leave the hospital," she explained with a sad look on her face. "Unfortunately, it's very difficult to find families willing to take 3 children together, especially with 2 tiny infants who need so much special care. They'll most likely have to be separated into different homes with different families." Emma, who had been listening carefully from her hospital bed while pretending to sleep, suddenly sat up and started crying harder than Marcus had ever seen anyone cry. "No," she sobbed, her whole body shaking. "You can't take Tommy and Jake away from me. I'm their big sister. I take care of them. I promised Mama I would never let anything bad happen to them." She tried to get out of bed to grab her brothers, but the nurses gently held her back. Marcus felt something powerful and strong inside him snap like a rubber band, and without thinking about what he was saying, he stood up from his chair and spoke the words that would change all their lives forever. "They're not going anywhere," he said in a firm, strong voice that surprised even himself. "I'm going to adopt all 3 of them and give them a real home." Everyone in the crowded hospital room stared at Marcus in complete shock, like he had just said something impossible. Mrs. Peterson looked very confused and worried. "Mr. Williams, adoption is a very long and complicated process," she said slowly, like she was talking to someone who didn't understand. "Are you absolutely sure you understand what you're saying? Taking care of 3 young children, especially twin babies, is incredibly difficult and expensive. It will change your entire life completely." Marcus looked directly at Emma, who had stopped crying and was staring at him with hope and wonder shining in her eyes like bright stars. He thought about his beloved son Alex, and how Alex would have wanted Marcus to help other children who needed love and safety and a real family. "I have never been more sure of anything in my entire life," Marcus said with complete certainty. "These children need a home where they can stay together, and I can give them that home. Emma has already shown that she's an amazing big sister who loves her brothers more than anything in the world, and I want to help her take care of them. I want to be their father." Emma's eyes filled with happy tears, and for the first time since he found them under the bridge, she smiled a real smile that lit up her whole face. The adoption process took many long months of paperwork, meetings, and legal procedures, but Marcus used all his money and business connections to make it happen as quickly as possible. During that time, Emma and the twins lived in a beautiful, comfortable apartment that Marcus rented right near his big house. He hired a professional nanny named Maria to help take care of the babies during the day, but Emma insisted on being involved in everything that had to do with her brothers. She learned how to change dirty diapers, make warm bottles of milk, and rock the babies to sleep when they were fussy. Marcus visited them every single day without fail, bringing new toys and colorful books, and spending many hours playing games with Emma and helping her take care of Tommy and Jake. Slowly, as the weeks and months passed by, Emma began to trust Marcus completely and totally. She started calling him Uncle Marcus at first, and then one special day that Marcus would never forget, she surprised him by asking shyly, "Can I call you Daddy? I mean, if you want me to." Marcus felt his eyes fill with happy tears, and he hugged her tightly. "I will be honored if you call me Daddy," he said. "And I promise I will be the best father I can possibly be to all three of you." When the adoption was finally approved by the court and became official, Marcus threw a big, wonderful party to celebrate their new family. Emma wore a beautiful white dress that made her look like a princess, and the twins were dressed in matching blue outfits that Marcus had bought especially for this special day. As they signed the final legal papers that made them officially a family, Emma hugged Marcus as tightly as she could. "Thank you for keeping your promise," she whispered in his ear. "Thank you for not letting anyone separate us." Marcus hugged her back, with tears of pure joy streaming down his face. "Thank you for teaching me how to be a father again," he whispered back to her. "Thank you for bringing so much love and happiness back into my life." The first few months of living together as a real family were both wonderful and challenging. Marcus had to learn how to take care of babies again, something he hadn't done since Alex was small. He had to wake up in the middle of the night when Tommy or Jake was crying, learn how to make baby food, and figure out how to keep two active babies safe and happy. Emma was an amazing helper, always ready to assist with feeding time, bath time, and playtime. She taught Marcus which cry meant the babies were hungry, and which cry meant they needed their diapers changed. As the babies grew bigger and stronger, they became more active and curious about the world around them. Tommy was always trying to crawl to new places and explore everything he could reach, while Jake was quieter and loved to be held and cuddled. Emma made sure both her brothers got equal attention and love. She would read them stories every night before bed, sing lullabies when they were scared, and play peekaboo games that made them giggle with delight. Marcus enrolled Emma in the best school in the city, and she worked very hard to catch up on all the learning she had missed while she was living on the streets. Her teachers were amazed at how smart and determined she was. Even though she had been through such terrible experiences, Emma never gave up on trying to learn new things. She was especially good at math and reading, and she loved to write stories about families who loved each other no matter what happened to them. The other children at school were very curious about Emma's story when they learned that she had been adopted along with her baby brothers. Some kids were mean and said hurtful things, but Emma learned to ignore them and focus on the friends who were kind to her. She made several good friends who came to play at Marcus's house and loved helping take care of Tommy and Jake. Emma always told her friends how lucky she felt to have a father who loved her and brothers who needed her. As Tommy and Jake grew from babies into toddlers, they became more and more active and mischievous. They learned to walk and run and climb on everything they could find. Marcus had a baby-proof the entire house, putting locks on cabinets and gates at the top of stairs to keep the boys safe. Emma was always watching out for her brothers, making sure they didn't get into too much trouble. She taught them simple words like Mama and Dada and Emma, and she was so proud when they said their first sentences. Marcus found that having 3 children in his house changed everything about his life, but in the most wonderful way possible. The house that had been so quiet and sad after Alex died was now full of laughter, music, running feet, and happy voices. There were toys scattered everywhere. Children's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with colorful magnets, and the sound of Emma reading bedtime stories every evening. Marcus had never been happier in his entire life. When Emma turned 10 years old, Marcus threw her the biggest birthday party she had ever imagined. He invited all her friends from school, hired a magician to perform tricks, and bought a huge cake decorated with flowers and butterflies. Emma had never had a real birthday party before, and she was so excited she could barely contain herself. Tommy and Jake, now 2 years old, ran around the yard playing with balloons and eating cake with their hands. Emma made a wish when she blew out her candles, and later she told Marcus she had wished for their family to stay together forever and ever. Years passed quickly, and before Marcus knew it, Emma was 12 years old and at the very top of her class in school. She had grown into a confident, intelligent, and caring young girl who still loved her brothers more than anything in the world. She had decided she wanted to become a doctor when she grew up, so she could help other children who were sick or hurt like Tommy and Jake had been when they were babies. Emma studied very hard and got excellent grades in all her subjects, especially science and biology. Tommy and Jake were now happy, healthy 6-year-olds who loved to play soccer in the backyard and draw pictures with their colored pencils. They didn't remember their early days of struggle and hunger on the bridge, but Emma made sure they understood how important it was to help other people who were in need of kindness and support. She told them stories about how their father Marcus had saved them and brought them to a safe, loving home where they would never be hungry or cold again. Marcus's business continued to be very successful, and he used much of his money to help other children who were in situations similar to what Emma, Tommy, and Jake had experienced. He started a foundation that provided food, clothing, and shelter for homeless families, and he made sure that children were never separated from their siblings if at all possible. Emma often helped him at the foundation events, telling their story to other people and encouraging them to help children in need. Sometimes people who knew Marcus's story asked him why he had decided to adopt 3 children when he was a single man who was still dealing with his own grief and sadness. His answer was always the same, and he meant every word. I didn't save them. They saved me. He learned that when people called his story, Millionaire found little girl with 2 babies sleeping on the bridge. They didn't understand the real truth. The real story was about how love can heal even the most broken hearts, how children can teach adults what truly matters in life, and how family isn't just about being related by blood, but about choosing to care for each other through good times and bad times. Marcus never remarried, but he didn't feel lonely or sad anymore. He had Emma helping him make pancakes every Sunday morning, Tommy and Jake fighting over who got to sit next to him at dinner every evening, and 3 wonderful children who needed him just as much as he needed them. On quiet evenings, when all 3 kids were finally asleep in their beds, Marcus would sit in his comfortable chair and remember Alex with love and gratitude. He knew deep in his heart that his son would be very proud of the beautiful family they had built together and the love they shared every single day. The millionaire who once thought he had lost everything had actually found the greatest treasure of all, the chance to be a father again, and the incredible joy of watching 3 amazing children grow up knowing they were completely loved, perfectly safe, and would never, ever be abandoned again. Their story became a reminder that sometimes the most precious things in life come to us when we least expect them, and that opening our hearts to help others can heal us in ways we never imagined possible.